Welcome to Noir Street.
Like, subscribe, and stay on Noir Street. Tell me, which part of the world are you watching from?
Chapter 1. The ribbon changed before morning when a man telephones Nero Wolfe at 11:30 at night and says that a typewriter ribbon may get him killed. There are several possible responses. Wolfe selected the one requiring the least movement. "Send the ribbon," he said. The voice on the telephone sharpened. "I cannot, then send the typewriter. That is impossible." "Nothing is impossible. Some things are merely expensive." I was at my desk in the office on West 35th Street, finishing the day's records. Wolfe sat behind his desk with a book open before him and a bottle of beer at his right hand. The caller had identified himself as Arthur Blackwood, owner of Blackwood Press on Riddle Street. Blackwood's breathing came across the wire in short, careful pulls. "The ribbon contains a record," he said. "Every word typed upon it during the last 3 days. Typewriter ribbons commonly do. This record proves that someone in my firm prepared a false contract, altered a manuscript, and sent a threat in my name. Then preserve it. I have but 4 people know it exists. Who? I will give you their names tomorrow." Wolfe's lips compressed. "Sir, you have interrupted my reading to announce danger while withholding its source. That is flummery. I need you at Blackwood Press at 9 in the morning. I do not visit clients. I will pay $5,000 for consultation, for finding the truth if anything happens to me." Wolfe looked at me. That meant the call had become mine. I took the receiver. "Mr. Blackwood, Archie Goodwin, put the ribbon in an envelope, sign across the seal, and lock it somewhere nobody knows about. I already locked it in my office safe. Does anyone else know the combination?" "My daughter, my managing editor, possibly my secretary. That is an unusually broad definition of nobody. I changed the combination this evening. Good, now call the police, if you expect violence." "I cannot, not until I know which of them did it." The line went dead. Wolfe picked up his book. "You accepted the job," I said. "Number you discussed a fee." I heard one. "He expects us at 9. He expects too much." At 8:12 the next morning, Inspector Thomas Reed telephoned to say Arthur Blackwood had been murdered. That was how I came to be standing in the front office of Blackwood Press at 8:40 on a grey morning while rain stroked the windows and a woman named Evelyn Hart fitted a fresh black ribbon into a typewriter. Blackwood Press occupied a narrow brick building halfway down Riddle Street. Its ground floor held a reception room, a shipping office, and a passage smelling of paper, ink, and damp wool. The second floor contained the editorial rooms. Arthur Blackwood's private office was at the rear, behind 2 doors of dark oak. Evelyn Hart sat at a desk outside it. She was 30 or thereabouts, with brown hair pinned neatly behind her head, and a face that could have been called calm if her fingers had not been moving so quickly. The typewriter was a black royal. Its top cover stood open. A new ribbon ran between the guides, glossy and dark. The empty ribbon box lay beside her elbow. "You picked an interesting morning for maintenance," I said. She looked at me. "You are Mr. Goodwin. That saves an introduction." "Mr. Reed," said Nero Wolfe, had been consulted. "Mr. Blackwood phoned him last night." Her right hand stopped above the ribbon spool. "What did he say?" "That is a question I reserve for people who answer mine. Why are you changing the ribbon?" "It was worn." "When did you notice?" "Yesterday." "Why wait until this morning?" "I had work to finish." "On a worn ribbon." Her mouth tightened. "I change ribbons regularly, Mr. Goodwin." "How regularly?" "Every 2 weeks." I looked at the calendar on her desk. A small note in the lower corner read, "Ribbon changed, Monday. It was Thursday." "Your calendar says you changed it 3 days ago." For the first time her calm left her entirely. It returned quickly, but I had seen where it went. "That refers to the adding machine ribbon. There is no adding machine on your desk." "It was moved." "Where?" "I don't know." A uniformed policeman came from Blackwood's office and told me Reed was waiting. I left Evelyn with the new ribbon half installed. Arthur Blackwood lay beside a long table covered with manuscripts. He was 61, lean, silver-haired, and dressed in a dark business suit. A brass printer's block shaped like an open book lay near his shoulder. Blood darkened one corner. Reed stood beside the body. "The medical examiner says one blow," he told me, "probably between 6:30 and 7:30 this morning." "Who found him?" "Night watchman at 7:45. The door was bolted from inside. The main door had a brass lock and an additional sliding bolt mounted 4 feet above the floor. The key remained in Blackwood's pocket. The bolt had been forced when the watchman and a printer broke the door. Windows, latched. Fire stairs, wet and untouched. Other door. A narrow door behind a curtain led to a private washroom. Its only exit returned to the office. The vent was too small for a cat with ambition. He examined the bolt. A thin black smear marked its underside. "Ink," Reed nodded. "Typewriter ink." Caught behind one screw was a short black fiber. "Ribbon," I said, "possibly." Summonen pulled the bolt from outside. "The gap beneath the door is less than half an inch. Enough for ribbon." Reed had already tested the theory. A strip could be looped around the bolt before the killer left. Both ends were passed beneath the door. A sideways pull slid the bolt into place. One end was then released, allowing the killer to draw most of the ribbon away. "Most?" I asked. Reed showed me an evidence envelope. Inside was a black strip, half an inch long. This remained caught behind the screw. So the locked room was tied shut with a typewriter ribbon. Summonen wanted it to appear impossible. Summonen also needed a ribbon. We looked through the office. Blackwood's desk safe stood open. It contained contracts, cash, a pistol, and an empty paper envelope with his signature written across the broken seal. On the envelope he had typed, "Evelyn's machine. 3 days. Do not destroy the ribbon was gone," Reed said. "Miss Hart claims she found her old ribbon worn this morning and threw it into her wastebasket. The basket is empty. She says the cleaner emptied it. The cleaner says she did not. So the ribbon Blackwood locked in his safe vanished, and Evelyn replaced the ribbon in her machine. Either they were the same ribbon or somebody wants us to think so." Reed looked toward the door. "You spoke with Blackwood last night." "He spoke with Wolf. He said the ribbon proved someone had prepared a false contract, altered a manuscript, and sent a threat in his name. He said 4 people knew. Names. He died before giving them." Reed disliked that but could not arrest death for withholding evidence. A sheet of paper remained in Evelyn's typewriter. It carried one unfinished line. "Mr. Blackwood will not be available this morning because..." The sentence stopped after the dash. "When was that typed?" I asked. "Evelyn says at 8:10, after the body was found." The capital B was nearly blank on its lower curve. I raised the typewriter cover. The ribbon was new, but it had been installed backward. The inked outer surface faced away from the type bars. "Miss Hart types 80 words a minute," I said. "She would know before finishing one word that the ribbon was backward." Reed examined it. She wanted the typing to look faint. Or she wanted us to believe the new ribbon was defective. Why? To explain why she changed it again later. There were 3 ribbon boxes in the lower drawer of her desk. 2 were sealed. 1 was empty. All carried the mark of Bell Stationers, 6 blocks away. Reed telephoned the shop. A clerk confirmed that Evelyn had purchased 1 ribbon at 7:20 that morning. She had arrived before the shop officially opened and persuaded him to serve her through the side door. That meant Evelyn bought the replacement 25 minutes before the body was discovered. Reed brought her into Blackwood's office. She stopped at the sight of Arthur's body, though she had already seen it from the doorway. Her eyes moved to the open safe, the broken seal, and the fragment of ribbon in Reed's evidence envelope. "You bought a new ribbon at 7:20, Reed said. "Yes, you told Mr. Goodwin you changed ribbons regularly." "I do." "You changed this one Monday. It failed. You were inside the building before the body was found." "I came at 7. Why?" "Mr. Blackwood asked me to arrive early." Where is the note? He telephoned. Did you enter his office? Number, the door was locked. Did you knock? Yes. Sponse. None. Why didn't you summon the watchman? I assumed Mr. Blackwood had not arrived. His hat and coat were in the front closet. I did not notice. You then walked 6 blocks in the rain to buy a ribbon before the stationer opened. Yes. Why? Because I needed one. Reed held up the empty envelope. Arthur Blackwood locked your old ribbon in his safe last night. Evelyn's face went still. I know nothing about that. He told Nero Wolfe it contained evidence. I know nothing about that either. The bolt was pulled shut with typewriter ribbon. She looked at the door. Her voice dropped. Then whoever killed him took it from my machine. Your machine was locked. I keep the key in my desk. The desk was also locked. She said nothing, Reed asked. Who had another key? Mr. Blackwood. Anyone else? Julian Mercer, the managing editor. That gave us our first additional suspect. The other 3 arrived within 20 minutes. Julian Mercer was 45, smooth, haired, narrow, waisted, and dressed as if he expected a portrait painter. He had worked for Blackwood Press for 17 years and believed every question should be answered by someone beneath him. Ruth Blackwood, Arthur's daughter, was 34 and controlled the business accounts. She wore a grey coat and carried anger better than grief. Owen Pike was Blackwood Press's most successful author, a broad man with untidy hair and a voice made for crowded rooms. His new book was scheduled for publication the following week. The 4th person was Simon Vale, the firm's legal advisor, who arrived carrying a leather case and the conviction that police existed mainly to inconvenience clients. All 4 knew about the ribbon. Mercer admitted Arthur had questioned him about a false publishing contract. Ruth knew her father had removed a ribbon from Evelyn's machine. Pike knew Arthur suspected someone had altered the final chapter of his new manuscript. Vale knew about a threatening letter typed on Evelyn's machine and signed with Arthur's name. They agreed on nothing else. Reed assembled them in the conference room. Mr. Blackwood telephoned Nero Wolfe last night, he said. He stated that a typewriter ribbon contained proof of forgery, manuscript alteration, and a threat that ribbon has disappeared. Mercer glanced toward Evelyn. She changed it. Evelyn said, You had a key to my desk. For emergencies. A murderer is an emergency, Pike observed. Vale frowned at him. This is not amusing. It isn't intended to be. My manuscript was changed. 40 pages were replaced, including the section identifying the real author of a book Blackwood published 20 years ago. Ruth turned toward him. My father never stole a book. I did not say he did. Who did? Pike looked at Mercer. Mercer's composure thinned. That accusation is ridiculous. What accusation? Reed asked. Mr. Pike named no one. Mercer's mistake landed in the room and stayed there. Reed turned to Ruth. What false contract was your father investigating? A transfer of rights to an old novel called The Silent Harbor. The contract appears to give Blackwood Press permanent ownership. Appears the signature may be forged. Whose signature? Eleanor Shaw's. She wrote the novel and died before it was published. Pike leaned forward. My new manuscript claims Eleanor Shaw was not the only writer. She completed it from the notebooks of a man named Peter Hart. Evelyn's face changed at the name. Reed saw it. Relation. My father. There was our connection. Peter Hart had died 20 years earlier. Officially, he had been a copy editor at Blackwood Press. Evelyn said he had written most of The Silent Harbor, but received neither credit nor money. Arthur Blackwood had recently found Peter's original notes in the company archive. Who knew? Reed asked. All of us, Evelyn replied. Mercer stood. This is gossip. Arthur intended to delay Pike's book because it repeated an old and unsupported claim. Pike said. Arthur intended to publish the evidence. You cannot know that. I met him yesterday. So did I. So did everyone, Ruth said. That was why he called us here this morning. Reed looked around the table. Blackwood had arranged a meeting at 9. His daughter, managing editor, lawyer, leading author, and typist were all expected. Before the meeting, he intended to confront Whoever forged the contract and altered Pike's manuscript. Instead, he was dead behind a bolted door. I returned to Evelyn's typewriter and examined the spool posts. The left spindle carried a fresh scratch. A tiny shaving of brass lay beside it. Someone had removed the old ribbon hurriedly, with a tool rather than releasing the clasp. In the desk drawer, beneath a stack of carbon paper, I found a narrow metal letter opener with black ink on its tip. It belonged to Simon Vale. His initials were engraved on the handle. Vale denied putting it there. Ruth identified the carbon paper as hers. Mercer's spare desk key opened Evelyn's drawer. Pike's manuscript supplied the reason for searching the ribbon. Evelyn had bought the replacement before the murder was discovered. The old ribbon connected all of them almost as efficiently as a family will. At 11:30, I telephoned Wolf and gave him the facts. He listened without interruption until I described the backward ribbon. "Has Miss Hart typed anything since installing it?" he asked. "One line. Preserve the sheet. Reed already has it. Who told her to buy the replacement? She says nobody. Then she lies. That had occurred to us." "Did the stationer see what she carried?" I asked Reed, who called Bell Stationers again. The clerk remembered Evelyn carrying a flat brown parcel under her coat. It was roughly the size of a typewriter ribbon box, but much longer. "Manuscript pages?" I asked. "Possibly," Wolf said. "Or a ribbon stretched between boards to prevent its layers from touching." "Why would that matter?" "A used ribbon can be read if carefully unspooled. If crushed or rewound carelessly, the impressions overlap. So Evelyn preserved it. Perhaps, she says, she threw it away. Then she wishes the killer to believe it destroyed. That was better than panic, but only slightly." "What about the locked office?" "The ribbon pulled the bolt. That is pedestrian. You don't have to admire it." "I do not." "Who killed Blackwood? You have omitted the essential fact." "Which one?" "What was the last thing typed on the missing ribbon? If we had the ribbon, we could tell you." "Find Miss Hart's parcel." Evelyn had left Bell Stationers at 7:24. A newspaper seller saw her enter the railway parcel office 2 streets away. There she rented a storage box under the name Mary Hill. Reed obtained the box key from her handbag. Inside was the old ribbon. It had been removed from its spools, stretched carefully between 2 pieces of cardboard, covered with waxed paper and wrapped in brown cloth. Evelyn had protected every typed impression. She had not destroyed the evidence. She had hidden it. Reed placed the parcel on Arthur Blackwood's conference table. Evelyn looked at it and closed her eyes. "I was going to take it to Mr. Wolfe," she said. "Why lie?" Reed asked. "Because the person who killed Mr. Blackwood was still in the building. If they knew I had saved the ribbon, I would be next." "Who is the person?" "I don't know." "Who told you to remove it?" "Mr. Blackwood last night before he locked it in his safe." "But the ribbon was in the safe this morning." "Number that envelope contained a second ribbon." The room went quiet. Arthur had removed Evelyn's used ribbon on Wednesday evening and given it back to her with instructions to preserve it. He then placed another ribbon inside the signed envelope as bait. The killer opened the safe, stole the bait ribbon, and used part of it to lock the office door. Evelyn's real ribbon, the one containing 3 days of typed evidence, had never been in the study during the murder. Why replace it before the body was discovered? Mr. Blackwood told me that, if he failed to open his door by 7:15, I was to buy a new ribbon, hide the old one, and say nothing until Nero Wolfe arrived. "You came at 7? "Yes." "You knocked?" "Yes." "Did you hear anything?" Evelyn looked toward the locked office. A typewriter. Reed's eyes narrowed. "Inside Arthur's office." "Yes. Someone typed one line at 7:05. "What line?" "I could not see it." "Could Arthur type?" "With one finger." She looked at the 4 people in the conference room. It was fast, very fast. Only 2 people in Blackwood Press could type at that speed. Evelyn Hart was one. Julian Mercer had begun his career as a typist. The missing ribbon was no longer missing. It lay between cardboard on the conference table, carrying every word typed upon Evelyn's machine during the previous 3 days. Somewhere along its black length was a forged contract, an altered manuscript page, a threat written in Arthur Blackwood's name, and perhaps the sentence that had caused his murder. Everyone had called Evelyn's new ribbon a habit. Thomas Reed had called it panic. Wolfe, without leaving his chair, had called it preservation. All three descriptions contained part of the truth. But the person who entered Arthur's locked office before morning believed the old ribbon had vanished. That person had not yet learned that typewriters, like murderers, leave an impression every time they strike. Chapter 2. The letters that were too dark at noon. The recovered ribbon occupied more space on Nero Wolfe's desk than most clients. Evelyn Hart had stretched it between two pieces of cardboard in long, even rows, with waxed paper separating the layers. Under the office lamps, the ribbon looked black, glossy, and entirely unwilling to confess. Thomas Reed sat in the red leather chair. I had placed Evelyn's typewriter on a table near the bookshelves after carrying it from Riddle Street, an exertion Wolfe regarded as mine by natural law. Wolfe entered from the plant rooms, crossed to his chair, and inspected the machine. "You brought the entire contraption. You said to bring the ribbon. I did not say to bring its habitat." Reed lifted the top cover. "This is the new ribbon Evelyn bought at 7:20 yesterday morning. She installed it backward before we arrived." Deliberately, I added. Reed corrected the ribbon's direction, inserted a sheet of paper, and typed, "Arthur Blackwood was murdered before morning." The letters appeared dark, clean, and even every curve was solid. Every edge was sharp. He placed beside it the unfinished sentence. Evelyn had typed while the ribbon faced backward. That line was grey and broken. Wolfe examined both. "Miss Hart wanted the ribbon to appear defective." "Yes," Reed said. "She admits it. If the killer entered the office while she was away, she wanted the machine to look as though it still held an exhausted ribbon. An unnecessary flourish. She was frightened. Fear is energetic." Reed opened his notebook. Evelyn claimed she changed ribbons every 2 weeks. That was false. Her calendar contradicted her. So does Harold Crane. Who is he? Office manager at Blackwood Press. He was away yesterday morning, arranging a paper shipment. He returned this morning. The surname got my attention. Any relation to Simon Vale, Julian Mercer, or the Blackwoods? Number Crane has managed the office for 23 years. He orders supplies, approves expense slips, and knows how long every pencil remains in service. An alarming man, Wolfe said. Reed had questioned him an hour earlier. Harold Crane was 58, stooped, bald at the front, and offended by waist. According to him, Evelyn Hart did not change a typewriter ribbon every 2 weeks. She changed one only when the letters became so faint that authors complained their rejection notices looked apologetic. "Average use?" Wolfe asked. 7 or 8 weeks, and the removed ribbon, installed 6 weeks ago. I looked at the preserved black strip, then it carried more than 3 days of typing. "Correct," Reed said. Arthur's note on the envelope was misleading. He typed 3 days because those were the days he wanted examined. Or because he wished the killer to believe the earlier impressions did not matter, Wolfe said. Reed nodded. Harold also keeps the ribbon boxes after installation. He writes the date on each and stores it in the supply cabinet. The box for Evelyn's old ribbon is dated 6 weeks ago. The box she bought yesterday is the first replacement since then. So her claim of regular replacement was nonsense, I said. Yes. Why did she lie after admitting Arthur ordered her to preserve the ribbon? Because Arthur's instructions did not explain everything she did. That sounded promising. Reed removed an unfinished letter from his folder. It was addressed to Simon Vale, the firm's lawyer. The first 2 paragraphs were typed in dark, firm characters. "Dear Simon, I have reviewed the original agreement concerning the Silent Harbor and compared it with the copy held in your office. They are not the same document. The disputed clause was added after Eleanor Shaw signed. I require an explanation before the board meets Friday." The next lines were much fainter. I also know who altered Owen Pike's manuscript and why Peter Hart's notebooks were removed from the archive. Before 9 tomorrow, You will return every copy and identify the person who instructed you. The final sentence was barely visible. If you refuse, the ribbon will speak for you. The letter was unsigned. Wolf read it. The beginning and end were typed at different times. That was my conclusion, Reed said. Not necessarily on different ribbons. Reed placed 2 enlarged photographs beside the letter. The dark paragraphs were typed with Evelyn's ribbon when it was still fairly new, approximately 5 weeks ago. The faint lines were added on Wednesday afternoon, after the ribbon had been heavily used. How do you know? Evelyn remembers typing the first 2 paragraphs. Arthur dictated them, then told her to leave the letter in his pending tray. She never typed the rest. Then someone used her machine later. Yes. I said. Someone completed Arthur's letter to Vale and added the line about the ribbon. Reed nodded. Possibly Arthur himself. Could he type? With one finger. But the faint lines are evenly spaced and fast. Evelyn's machine has a small defect. If the letter R is struck sharply, it sits half a point above the line. The final paragraphs contain 14 raised R's. Whoever typed them used normal speed. Mercer can type, I said. So can Simon Vale. He worked as a legal clerk before becoming an attorney. Ruth Blackwood types company accounts. Owen Pike claims he uses a pencil, but Harold remembers him borrowing Evelyn's machine twice. Wolf folded his hands over his middle. The skill is shared. What of the darkness? Reed explained. The old ribbon had been faint on Wednesday because most of its surface had been used repeatedly. Yet the beginning of Arthur's unfinished letter was dark because it had been typed 5 weeks earlier, when the ribbon carried more ink. Someone added. The last lines after Arthur began investigating the false contract. The new writer deliberately used the exhausted section of the ribbon. If the page had been found alone, Reed said, the entire letter would appear to be Arthur's work completed over several weeks. But the ribbon preserves the true order of typing, Wolf said. Exactly. A typewritten page records words in reading order. A ribbon records them in striking order. The two are not always the same. Arthur's letter began 5 weeks earlier. During the following weeks, hundreds of pages passed through Evelyn's machine, contracts, correspondence, manuscript notes, and internal memoranda. Only on Wednesday did someone return to Arthur's unfinished sheet and add the threat. On paper, the paragraphs stood together. On the ribbon, they were separated by thousands of impressions. The old ribbon could prove that the letter had been completed much later than it began. Wolf looked at the black rows stretched between cardboard. What did the false addition accomplish? It made Simon Vale appear to have received a direct threat from Arthur, Reed said. If Vale killed him, the letter supplies motive. If someone else killed Arthur, it directs suspicion toward Vale. Was the letter found openly? It was beneath a stack of contracts in Arthur's desk. Then it was meant to be discovered during a search. Yes. Another planted accusation. Eard's eyes narrowed. The killer prepared the letter. Someone prepared it. Whether that person killed Arthur remains to be established. The doorbell rang. It was Harold Crane. He came into the office carrying a cardboard records box and wearing a brown suit that had given up trying to look new. His eyes found the typewriter immediately. You have corrected the ribbon, he said. You noticed it was backward, Reed asked. Miss Hart has never installed one backward in 12 years. Harold placed the box on my desk. These are her typing logs. Evelyn recorded every assignment by date, time, author, and number of pages. Harold required it to calculate production costs. The logs showed that on Wednesday she typed from 9 until 12, left for lunch, returned at 1, and worked until 5:15. At 3:10, she typed 6 pages for Julian Mercer. At 3:40, she typed a contract correction for Ruth Blackwood. At 4:05, she typed a memorandum for Simon Vale. At 4:30, she typed 2 pages of Owen Pike's manuscript. All 4 suspects used Evelyn's machine or supplied work typed upon it during the hours Arthur believed the forged material was produced. Where was Evelyn at 5:15? Reed asked. She went downstairs to collect a parcel, Harold said. For how long? 11 minutes. Was her desk locked? She says yes. You doubt her. I found the lock scratched Thursday morning. The scratch was already known. Someone had used Simon Vale's letter opener to force the ribbon clasp or drawer. Harold continued. At 5:20, I saw Julian Mercer leave Evelyn's office. Mercer had claimed he remained in the editorial room all afternoon. What was he carrying? Reed asked. A sheet of carbon paper. Carbon paper belonging to Ruth had been found in Evelyn's drawer. The objects were traveling between suspects, with more enthusiasm than the suspects themselves. Reed asked Harold about the missing adding machine. There has never been an adding machine on Evelyn's desk. Then why would she write ribbon changed Monday on her calendar? Harold looked at the old ribbon. She did not. Evelyn's calendar entry had been written in blue pencil. Harold said, Evelyn used black pencil for office notes and green for personal appointments. Julian Mercer used blue. Could he have entered the note? Reed asked. Anion could. That sentence has exhausted its usefulness, Wolfe muttered. Harold opened the records box and removed a sheet of blotting paper from Evelyn's desk pad. Under angled light. Impressions appeared. Remove ribbon Thursday before 7. Say regular change. Speak to no one until Wolfe. Ab Arthur had instructed Evelyn to lie about her habit. That explained her false story. He wanted anyone watching her to believe the ribbon was ordinary and disposable. Why not tell the police immediately? Reed asked. Because Blackwood expected the person responsible to watch Evelyn, Wolfe said. Her lie was bait. Harold produced one more item, a wastebasket inventory from Wednesday night. He kept such lists whenever confidential papers were destroyed. At 6 o'clock, Evelyn's basket contained carbon scraps, 2 rejected pages, and a short piece of typewriter ribbon, not the full ribbon, a piece 4 inches long. At 7 the next morning, the basket was empty. The cleaner did not empty it, Reed said. No, Harold replied. I did. Everyone looked at him. Yesterday morning, Reed asked. At 6:40. You told the police you were arranging a paper shipment. I was. I stopped at the office first. Why conceal that? Because when I entered, Arthur's door was closed, and someone was inside Evelyn's room. Who? I saw only a shadow through the glass. Man or woman, I could not tell. What did you do with the waste? Burned it in the furnace. Including the ribbon piece? Yes. Reed's voice sharpened. Why? Mr. Blackwood had told me the previous evening to destroy everything in Evelyn's basket before 7. Wolfe's eyes opened wider. Did he explain? Number, then Samuel. I stopped. Wrong dead man. Too many murders on Riddle Street can damage a narrator's filing system. Then Arthur arranged both sides of a trap. Evelyn preserved the full ribbon. Harold destroyed a loose section. Reed asked. What had been typed with the loose section? Harold did not know. Wolfe did. At 5:15 Wednesday, someone removed the ribbon from Miss Hart's machine, cut away 4 inches, and rejoined the ends. That section contained a brief passage the writer could not permit the preserved ribbon to retain. The threat? I asked. Perhaps, but the unfinished letter's final lines remain on the ribbon. So not those. Reed looked at the recovered strip stretched across the cardboard. A 4-inch gap. Find it, Wolfe said. Reading a used ribbon is slow work. Every typed character appears as a pale shape in the ink. Lines overlap as the spool wins, but Evelyn had preserved the ribbon's order, and Harold's typing log supplied times and assignments. Amos Bell, a police document examiner, arrived that afternoon with lamps, lenses, and a camera. He located the cut. The ribbon had been joined with a tiny square of clear adhesive near the section used at 5:20 on Wednesday. 4 inches were missing. Immediately before the cut, the ribbon carried part of Owen Pike's altered manuscript. Peter Hart gave the original notebooks to, immediately after the cut. The sentence continued, and received no payment before his death. The missing name had been removed from the ribbon. The page itself had also vanished from Pike's manuscript. Arthur Blackwood had discovered the deletion. He had ordered Evelyn to preserve the ribbon, because even without the missing 4 inches, the surrounding words proved where the name belonged. Someone entered Evelyn's office, cut out the name, rejoined the ribbon, and later killed Arthur to prevent him from revealing it. The fresh ribbon was dark. The old ribbon was faint, but the darkness of the new letters mattered less than the missing space among the old ones. By evening, Thomas Reed no longer wondered merely what a used ribbon could remember. He wanted to know which name someone had cut from its memory, and why Arthur Blackwood had died before he could type it again. Chapter 3. The words left on the ribbon, a typewriter ribbon, is a black road traveled by letters. Each metal type bar strikes the paper through the ribbon and removes a little ink in the shape of a character. An A leaves an A, a comma leaves a comma. A careless typist leaves a history of errors, corrections, and second thoughts. The difficulty is that the road winds around 2 spools, crossing itself in layers. Reading it requires patience, strong light, and a willingness to spend hours staring at pale marks against black cloth. Nero Wolfe possessed patience, but had no intention of spending it that way. "This is mechanical work," he said. Amos Bell, the police document examiner, looked up from the long ribbon stretched across our office table. "It requires judgment. So does chopping an onion. Fritz does not invite me to supervise." Fritz, passing through with a tray of coffee, gave Wolfe a look of injured dignity and continued toward the kitchen. Thomas Reed had brought Bell, Evelyn Hart, the recovered ribbon, Evelyn's typing logs, and Arthur Blackwood's unfinished letter to West 35th Street. At Wolfe's order, I closed the office curtains. Bell set up 2 lamps, one above the ribbon and one behind it, then photographed the pale impressions section by section. Evelyn sat near my desk. She had slept badly and dressed carefully, 2 decisions that often travel together. Reed stood behind her. "You told us Arthur ordered you to preserve this ribbon." "Yes." "You also said he told you to replace it if he failed to open his office by 7:15. "Yes." "Those instructions explain why you bought a new ribbon. They do not explain why you installed it backward, lied about your habits, or concealed a parcel box key in your glove." "I was afraid." "Of whom?" "I don't know." That answer has become worn. Wolfe turned his head. "Miss Hart, Mr. Reed suspects you are withholding a fact because it supplies you with a motive. If so, your silence is futile. Motives are abundant. Facts are less accommodating." Evelyn looked at the ribbon. "My father's name was on it." "We know," Reed said. "Peter Hart. Not merely his name." She stopped. Reed waited, but she refused to continue. Amos Bell bent over the ribbon with a lens. "I have the passage before the cut." He read slowly from the pale marks. Peter Hart gave the original notebooks to. He moved beyond the 4-inch gap and received no payment before his death. "The missing name was cut out," I said. "Yes, but the sentence appeared twice." Evelyn looked up sharply. Bell adjusted the lamp. "A typist sometimes strikes a line more than once if making several copies separately. The first impression was cut from the ribbon. The second occurred earlier, on a different section." Reed leaned over the table. "Can you read it?" "Not yet." The second version was buried among hundreds of older impressions. Bell marked its location and began photographing it. Wolfe asked Evelyn, "When did Arthur dictate the confidential document?" She went still. "I never said there was one. Mr. Blackwood told me the ribbon contained proof of a false contract, an altered manuscript, and a threat. Those are 3 items. Yet he guarded it with an elaborate deception, ordered you to preserve it, enlisted Mr. Crane to destroy a cut fragment, and summoned me. Such precautions suggest a 4th item, the one worth killing for." Reed said, "We searched every file. No confidential document was found." "Because Miss Hart destroyed the paper," Wolfe said. Evelyn looked at him. "How could you know?" "Your fingers." She lowered them. A shallow red cut crossed the side of her right forefinger. Wolfe continued. "The furnace at Blackwood Press has an iron draft door. Mr. Crane says its edge is sharp. You burned a paper there Wednesday evening and cut your finger closing it. I could have burned anything. You could. You burned something you had typed privately for Arthur. The ribbon retained it, and that is why he ordered the ribbon preserved. Evelyn's resistance lasted another 10 seconds. Tuesday night, she said finally. Arthur asked me to remain after everyone left. At 6:30, he locked the front office and brought me into his study. He dictated a statement. What kind? Reed asked. A confession. The room became quieter. Arthur's confession. Yes. To what? He said. He had discovered that my father wrote most of The Silent Harbor. Eleanor Shaw completed the last chapters. After father became ill, Arthur knew there had been a dispute over authorship, but Julian Mercer produced a contract giving Eleanor sole credit and Blackwood Press all rights. Mercer again. Did Arthur know the contract was false? I asked. Not then. He claimed he believed it. 2 months ago, Owen Pike found my father's notebooks in the archive. Arthur compared them with the published novel and realized the truth. What did the confession say? That Peter Hart was the principal author, that the contract bearing Eleanor Shaw's signature had been altered, that royalties owed to my father's estate had been diverted for 20 years. To whom? Evelyn's lips tightened. The statement named 3 people. Name them. Julian Mercer, Simon Vale, Ruth Blackwood. That distributed the trouble evenly. Reed opened his notebook. What did Arthur say each had done? Julian prepared the original publication file and presented the disputed contract. Simon later certified the contract as genuine. Ruth controlled a private royalty account that received money from foreign editions. Did Arthur accuse all 3 of knowing the truth? Number, he said. 1 created the fraud. 1 discovered it years later and concealed it, and 1 handled money without knowing its source. Which was which? He did not say in the first draft. The first draft. Evelyn looked toward the ribbon. He dictated a second document Wednesday afternoon. Where? At my desk. Everyone had gone to a board meeting downstairs. What happened to that paper? Arthur took it. It was not in his office. Then someone removed it. Did the second document name the guilty person? Reed's pencil stopped. Who? Evelyn shook her head. I promised Arthur I would not repeat it unless the ribbon could prove it. That is lunacy, Reed said. It is caution, Arthur said. The person had already forged his name and threatened him. If I accused someone without the document, I would be called a liar. You are already withholding evidence in a murder investigation. I preserved the evidence. You also replaced the ribbon before the body was discovered. Arthur ordered me to. Not the whole truth, Reed said. She looked at him and said nothing. Reed placed the fresh test page before her. When we corrected the new ribbon, it produced dark, clean letters. Harold Crane says you use ribbons until the type is barely readable. You installed this one backward to make it appear worn. Why did you need the machine to seem unchanged? Evelyn's hands closed together. Because Arthur told me the killer might return to type one final page. What page? A withdrawal. Arthur had prepared a public statement naming Peter Hart as the true author and announcing an audit of the royalties. The killer needed a signed withdrawal, claiming that Arthur's investigation had been based on false papers. If the typewriter appeared to hold the old ribbon, Evelyn said, the person might use it. Arthur believed the ribbon would record the withdrawal and identify whoever typed it. But Arthur was dead, I said. I did not know that when I arrived, the door was locked. At 7:05, I heard someone typing inside. Fast typing, Reed said. Yes. You believed the killer was still in the office. I believed someone was finishing the withdrawal. Yet you left to buy another ribbon. I had to follow Arthur's instructions. He said that if the office remained locked at 7:15, I was to preserve the used ribbon, install a fresh one, and wait for Wolf. Wolf's eyes narrowed. But the used ribbon was already in your possession. Yes. Then what ribbon did you expect to remove at 7:15? Evelyn stared at him. The bait ribbon Arthur placed in his safe. That was impossible on the surface and therefore worth examining. Arthur had removed Evelyn's true ribbon Wednesday evening and returned it to her. He placed another used ribbon inside the signed envelope in his safe. The killer stole that ribbon, used a length to bolt the office door, and apparently installed the remainder in Arthur's own typewriter. At 7:05, Evelyn heard typing inside the locked office. The killer had used the bait ribbon to type the withdrawal. "Where is Arthur's typewriter?" Wolf asked. Reed looked at me. "In the study, on a stand near the window." "What ribbon does it contain?" Reed telephoned. The officer guarding Blackwood Press. The answer came 3 minutes later. Arthur's typewriter contained no ribbon at all. Summonen had typed the withdrawal, removed the ribbon, used part of it to lock the door, and taken the rest. The missing bait ribbon therefore carried the final page typed inside the office. Wolf said, "Miss Hart replaced her ribbon immediately because she wished the killer to believe that genuine evidence had been discarded. She installed the new ribbon backward because a dark, unused ribbon would reveal that the old one had already been removed before the murder." Reed turned to Evelyn. "Why not tell us that yesterday?" "Because the withdrawal may have been typed on my machine, not Arthur's. You heard it from behind a closed door. I heard a typewriter. I assumed it was his." "What changed your mind?" "The sound." "What sound?" "My machine's carriage bell has a dull ring. Arthur's has a sharp one. I heard the dull bell." The typewriter now sitting in Wolf's office had apparently been inside Arthur's locked study at 7:05, then returned to Evelyn's desk before the body was discovered. That meant the killer had moved it through the locked door. Or Evelyn was lying, Reed said. "The watchman found your machine outside Arthur's office at 7:45. "I know. Could it have been passed through the transom?" "There is no transom." "Through the washroom vent. It is too small." "Then it never entered the office." Evelyn looked helplessly at the Black Royal. "I know what I heard," Wolf asked. "Does Arthur's machine possess the same carriage width?" "Yes." "The same bell?" "Number could the bells be exchanged?" Harold Crane, who had arrived silently during the questioning, answered from the doorway. "Yes, someone changed them last week." He entered carrying a maintenance invoice. The office repairman had been called because Evelyn complained that her carriage bell had stopped ringing. Julian Mercer instructed him to exchange it with the bell on Arthur's machine until a replacement arrived. The dull bell was now on Arthur's typewriter. The sharp bell was on Evelyn's. Evelyn had heard Arthur's machine after all. Who knew the bells were exchanged? Reed asked. "Evelyn, Arthur, Julian, and me," Harold said. "Simon Vale. He was present when the repairman came. Ruth. She signed the invoice. Owen Pike. He complained about the noise. Once again, everybody knew enough. Amos Bell called us to the ribbon table. He had reconstructed the earlier version of the sentence surrounding the missing 4 inches. The impressions were faint, but the words could be read. Peter Hart gave the original notebooks to Julian Mercer and received no payment before his death. Mercer's name had been cut from the later occurrence, but it survived in the earlier one. That did not prove Mercer killed Arthur. It proved only that Arthur's confidential document named him in connection with Peter Hart's notebooks. Bell continued along the ribbon and found the beginning of the destroyed confession. Evelyn had typed Tuesday night, "I, Arthur Blackwood, acknowledge that the published authorship and royalty record of The Silent Harbor is false." The next lines named Peter Hart. Then came a passage about the altered contract. Near the end, the impressions became dense because Evelyn had typed over one line with a row of XS before burning the paper. Bell used side lighting and recovered part of what lay beneath. The person who ordered the alteration was not Julian Mercer, though he prepared the file. The instruction came from. The name was gone, not faint, not obscured. Cut from the ribbon, the missing 4-inch section contained the final identification. Someone had entered Evelyn's office at 5:15 on Wednesday, found the confidential statement, located the name on the ribbon, cut it out, and rejoined the ends. Arthur discovered the cut later. He preserved the ribbon anyway, because the surrounding words still proved that a name had been removed. Reed looked at Evelyn. "Did you see the name before typing over it?" Yes, who was it? She refused again. Wolf's eyes closed. Miss Hart, your loyalty to a dead man has become vanity. Arthur told you to let the ribbon prove the accusation. The ribbon proves deliberate removal, but not the removed name speak. Evelyn's voice was barely audible. Ruth Blackwood, Arthur's daughter. The room held still. Evelyn continued. Arthur dictated that Ruth ordered Simon Vale to alter the royalty agreement 12 years ago, after she discovered Peter Hart's claim. Julian Mercer had prepared the original file, but Ruth changed the contract and diverted the money, Reed said. Why protect her? Because Arthur was not certain. He planned to confront all three before accusing his daughter publicly. Wolf looked at the ribbon. Then neither should we be certain. The used ribbon had remembered nearly everything. It remembered Arthur's confession. It remembered Peter Hart's name. It remembered Julian Mercer receiving the notebooks. It remembered the false contract and the missing royalties. Most important, it remembered the exact place where someone had cut away Ruth Blackwood's name. But the ribbon could not tell whether Ruth removed it herself, or whether another person removed it to protect her, threaten her, or make her appear guilty. The missing document had survived as pale wounds in black cloth. The words were still there, only the name was gone, and the empty space it left had become more dangerous than anything Arthur Blackwood had managed to type. Chapter 4. The Wastebasket. With nothing in it, a wastebasket is expected to contain waste. When it contains nothing, a detective either ignores it or gives it a promotion. Thomas Reed promoted Evelyn Hart's wastebasket. He brought it to West 35th Street on Friday morning in a police evidence sack. It was a plain metal cylinder, painted dark green with one dent near the base, and enough ink stains around the rim to prove it had lived beside a typewriter. Wolf looked at it from behind his desk. Number Reed placed it on the floor beside the red leather chair. "Know what? I will not have rubbish elevated to furniture. It may have been searched by the murderer." Then put it on Goodwin's desk. That is where disturbances accumulate. I received the wastebasket without voting. Reed had spent Thursday reconstructing every movement inside Blackwood Press from Arthur's final dictation on Wednesday until the discovery of his body Thursday morning. He had made a chart. At 3:30 Wednesday afternoon, Arthur entered Evelyn's typing room and locked the outer door. At 3:40, Evelyn began typing his second confidential statement. At 4:10, Arthur corrected 2 pages by hand. At 4:25, he took the original paper into his office. At 4:30, Evelyn resumed work on Owen Pike's manuscript. At 5:15, she went downstairs to collect a parcel during her 11-minute absence. Someone entered her typing room, cut 4 inches from the ribbon, rejoined the ends, and removed 1 manuscript page. At 6, Harold Crane inventoried Evelyn's wastebasket. At 6:15, Arthur gave Evelyn the true ribbon and ordered her to preserve it. At 6:20, Evelyn wrapped the ribbon between cardboard sheets. At 6:30, she carried a small parcel downstairs. At 6:40, Harold emptied the wastebasket and burned its contents under Arthur's instructions. At 7:10, Evelyn left Blackwood Press with the preserved ribbon hidden under her coat. At 11:30, Arthur telephoned Wolf. At some point before 7 the next morning, Arthur was murdered. "That is not a reconstruction," Wolf said. "It is a list." Reed remained patient. "I have witnesses for most of it. Most is a refuge for error." The cleaner Martha Webb supplied the first useful correction. She had worked at Blackwood Press for 9 years and regarded publishers as people who produced dust in rectangular piles. Reed brought her into the office. She was a square woman with grey hair, strong hands, and no respect for confidential documents left where a mop could find them. "You saw Miss Hart carrying a parcel downstairs Wednesday evening?" Reed asked. At 6:35. "What did it look like?" "Brown paper, flat, about this long." She held her hands 2 feet apart. "The preserved ribbon," I said. Evelyn had stretched it between cardboard sheets of roughly that length. Martha nodded. She carried it against her coat as if she did not want it bent. Where did she take it? To the basement. Did she burn it? I saw her come back with it under her coat. Why go downstairs? There is a wrapping room beside the furnace. String, paper, wax, labels. She wrapped it there. Did anyone follow her? Mr. Mercer went down 2 minutes later. Julian Mercer had told Reed he left the building at 6:15. Did he enter the wrapping room? Reed asked. I don't know. I heard the basement door. Then Mr. Blackwood called me to the second floor. What did he want? He asked whether anyone had touched the wastebasket in Miss Hart's room. What did you say? That I had not. Did he tell you why it mattered? He told me not to empty it. Yet Harold Crane emptied it at 6:40. Mr. Blackwood told him to. That was deliberate. Arthur wanted the basket left untouched until Harold inventoried it, then destroyed before anyone else could search it. What was inside? Wolf asked. Martha listed what she remembered seeing before 6 o'clock. Carbon paper, 2 envelopes, manuscript scraps, a broken pencil, and a short strip of black ribbon. No full ribbon? Reed asked. Was the strip 4 inches long? I did not measure rubbish. A proper answer. Did you see anyone enter Evelyn's room while she was downstairs at 5:15? Mr. Vale stood near it. Inside or outside? Outside when I passed. Inside when I came back. Simon Vale had denied entering the typing room that afternoon. Was he alone? The door was closed. How long? 5 minutes, perhaps. And Julian Mercer. He came from the stairs while Mr. Vale was inside. He knocked. Mr. Vale opened the door. They argued. About what? I heard Mr. Mercer say, "You cut the wrong line." Reed glanced at me. What did Vale answer? Then you should have done it yourself. Martha had not considered the exchange important until Arthur died. In offices, people argue about lines, pages, cuts, and corrections every day. Only afterward had the words acquired teeth. Did either man carry anything when he left? Reed asked. Mr. Vale had a sheet of paper folded in his pocket. Mr. Mercer carried carbon paper. Ruth Blackwood. She entered the typing room around 5:40. For what? She said she needed the royalty ledger. Was Evelyn present? Yes. Owen Pike. He came in at 6:05 and shouted about his missing page. The typing room had been busier than a railway platform. Whoever wished to erase evidence had enjoyed several possible entrances and an audience trained not to notice paper changing hands. After Martha left, Reed removed the wastebasket from its sack. The laboratory found fresh scratches on the inside. He showed us enlarged photographs. 3 parallel marks ran from the rim halfway down one side. Someone used a hook tool, he said. They stood outside the locked typing room and searched the basket through the open upper panel in the door. The typing room door had a small hinged opening once used to pass proofs. Evelyn locked the room when she left, but the panel remained open. A person could insert a cane, umbrella, or hooked ruler and lift papers from the basket. Why not enter with a key? I asked. Because the search occurred after Arthur took the spare keys. When, at 6:50 Wednesday evening, Harold saw him lock all 3 in his safe. Then the basket was searched after 6:50. Yes, by then, Harold had emptied it. Meaning the searcher found nothing. Exactly. Wolf regarded the green cylinder with slightly less hostility. The murderer believed the old ribbon had been discarded there. Reed nodded. Arthur and Evelyn arranged the deception. She replaced her ribbon, wrapped the real one, and carried it away. Harold burned the loose scraps. Anyone watching would assume the used ribbon had gone into the basket. But why search after Mr. Crane emptied it? Wolf asked. The searcher did not know he had. Then the searcher was absent when Mr. Crane entered the room at 6:40. Reed consulted his chart. At 6:40, Ruth was in the accounts office with Nora Wells. The outside auditor, Owen Pike, was telephoning his agent from the ground floor. Simon Vale says he was in Arthur's study. Julian Mercer claims he had left. Who saw Mr. Vale? Arthur's call log records a meeting, but no witness saw him enter or leave. And Mr. Mercer had not left, I said. Martha saw him in the basement after 6:30. Correct. Wolf's fingers pressed the arms of his chair. Who owned a hooked tool? Reed had considered that. Owen Pike carried a walking stick with a silver crook. Simon Vale's leather case contained a long document hook, used to retrieve files from high shelves. Ruth kept an umbrella with a hooked handle. Julian Mercer used a steel composing rule bent at one end. Once again, the office supplied everyone with the necessary equipment. Blackwood Press had apparently been designed by a committee eager to assist murder. Reed placed 4 photographs on Wolf's desk. Each showed the underside of one possible tool. Pike's walking stick was clean. Ruth's umbrella carried street dirt and a strand of red wool. Vale's document hook had green paint near the curve. Mercer's composing rule had a fresh scrape but no paint. The green paint on Vale's hook matched the wastebasket. Simon Vale searched it, I said. Or someone used his hook, Reed replied. Wolf grunted. That qualification is appropriate but monotonous. Vale was brought to the office at noon. He denied entering Evelyn's room, denied arguing with Mercer, and denied using his document hook on the wastebasket. Reed showed him the green paint. It fell from my case, Vale said. Anyon could have taken it. Why were you in the typing room at 5:20? I was not. Martha Webb saw you. She is mistaken. She heard Mercer tell you that you cut the wrong line. Vale's face changed slightly. We were discussing Owen Pike's manuscript. Which line? I don't remember. The missing line named Julian Mercer. Then ask Mercer. Why did you cut 4 inches from Evelyn's ribbon? I did not. Why did you search the wastebasket after 6:50? I did not. Vale rose. This interview is finished. Wolf opened his eyes. No, sir, it has merely failed. Vale looked at him. You have no authority to detain me, nor any desire. Leave. The invitation surprised him. He took his leather case and went. After the front door closed, Reed said, You let him walk. He expected accusation, denying him that pleasure may produce movement. What movement? He now knows we have the true ribbon. If he searched the basket, he believed it destroyed. Reed looked toward the preserved ribbon. You want him watched? Obviously. I arranged it. Saul Panzer took Vale, Fred Durkin took Mercer, and 2 police officers divided their attention between Ruth and Owen Pike at 3:10. Saul telephoned. Vale had gone directly to a private storage office near the river. He opened a box rented under the name Peter Hill and removed a packet of typed pages. When he saw Saul watching, he returned the packet, locked the box and left. Reed obtained a warrant. The packet contained carbon copies of Arthur's confidential statement, not the final version. Every page ended before the missing name. On top lay a note in Julian Mercer's hand. Destroy these after removing the heart reference from the ribbon. Ab must never know Ruth signed the instruction. Vale had preserved the note instead of destroying it. The initials Ab could mean Arthur Blackwood, but the sentence made that impossible. Someone else had written or dictated the order and used Arthur's initials as camouflage. Reed brought the packet to Wolf. Val knew what the ribbon contained, he said. He cut the heart reference and searched the basket. Yes, he may have killed Arthur. Possible, but you doubt it. I doubt every conclusion that arrives carrying another man's handwriting. The note appeared to be in Mercer's hand. Vale possessed it. Ruth's name appeared in its text. Arthur's initials appeared at the end. It connected 4 people and proved none of them had written the instruction. Evelyn arrived at 4. When Reed showed her the carbon copies, she admitted that she had made them Tuesday night. Arthur ordered 1 original and 3 carbons. He took all 4. Why did Vale have them? Reed asked. I don't know. Why did you replace the ribbon before the murder was discovered? She looked tired of the question. Because Arthur told me someone had already entered my room, cut the ribbon, and returned it. He said the same person would search my wastebasket after I left. If they found nothing, they might come after me. So you changed the ribbon because you were frightened? Yes. Not because you killed Arthur, Number Wolf said. Mr. Reed has nearly reached that conclusion without assistance. Reed ignored him. Who knew the confidential statement was typed on your machine? Arthur. Mr. Vale, because Arthur confronted him. Mr. Mercer, because he saw the page missing from Owen's manuscript. Ruth, because her name appeared in the statement. Owen Pike. He knew my father's claim was involved, but not that Arthur had dictated a confession. That left 4 people with exact knowledge of the ribbon and 1 author with partial knowledge. The empty wastebasket proved something the full ribbon could not: the killer, or someone working for the killer, had searched for the discarded ribbon after Harold destroyed the contents. That person expected Evelyn to follow her usual routine and throw the worn ribbon away. Instead, she carried it downstairs under her coat, wrapped between boards, and later hid it in the railway parcel office. Her new ribbon was not the act of a murderer erasing a record. It was the act of a frightened witness protecting one. Someone else had entered her typing room. Someone else had cut out a name. Someone else had searched an empty basket and found nothing. The absence inside that green metal cylinder was not empty at all. It proved that the person hunting the ribbon did not know Arthur and Evelyn had already moved the truth beyond reach. Chapter 5. The dictation Arthur never signed the shorthand notebook was found inside the hollow base of Evelyn Hart's desk lamp. That was not where a typist ordinarily kept notes, even at Blackwood Press, where ordinary behavior had become scarce. Thomas Reed discovered it because the lamp leaned slightly to the left. When he removed the felt beneath its base, a brass plate slid aside and revealed a narrow compartment. The notebook fitted exactly. Reed brought it to West 35th Street shortly before 11, while Wolfe was upstairs among the orchids. Evelyn came with him under protest. She said the notebook was private. Reed replied that murder had made privacy negotiable. At 11, Wolfe entered the office, took his chair, and regarded the notebook. "Shorthand," Evelyn's Reed said. "Then ask her to read it." "She refuses." Wolfe looked at Evelyn. "Why? Arthur told me never to translate it unless he signed the final statement. He is unable to sign anything. That does not cancel my promise. Number murder does." Evelyn sat beside my desk, her hands folded over her handbag. "The notes were not an ordinary business letter," she said. "They were preparation for a private statement." "We know Arthur dictated 2 confidential documents," Reed replied. "One concerned Peter Hart's authorship and the altered contract. Was this the same statement? Number that required rearranging some facts." "The first statement named Ruth Blackwood," I said. "Yes. Arthur suspected Ruth had ordered changes to the royalty agreement 12 years ago, but he later discovered that her instruction had been copied from an earlier authorization. She did not begin the fraud." "Then this notebook concerns the earlier authorization," Wolfe said. Evelyn nodded. "Arthur called it the Blackwood account statement." "Read it." She remained silent. Wolfe leaned back. "Miss Hart, you have confused fidelity with obstruction. Arthur preserved the ribbon because he intended the truth to survive him. Your refusal assists the person who killed him." Evelyn opened the notebook. The first pages contained ordinary dictation, dates, account numbers, initials, and references to foreign editions of The Silent Harbor. Then the notes changed. The lines became tightly spaced, with several words underlined twice. Evelyn began translating. "For 20 years, royalties due to the estate of Peter Hart were entered in the Blackwood Press accounts as payments to Eleanor Shaw. After Eleanor's death, the money should have remained in trust until the authorship dispute was settled." She turned the page. Instead, a private account called the Harbor Literary Fund was created. Money from foreign editions, stage rights, and later reprints was transferred into it. "How much?" Reed asked. Arthur estimated $380,000. That was enough to make old literature attractive. "Who controlled the fund?" I asked. Evelyn looked at the shorthand. 3 officers had authority. The first was Harold Crane, office manager of Blackwood Press. Harold received royalty statements, opened company mail, and prepared payment orders. The second was William Mercer, Arthur's business partner and holder of 40% of Blackwood Press. Relation to Julian Mercer? Reed asked. Older brother, Evelyn said. William brought Julian into the firm 17 years ago. That explained why Julian had behaved as if the building belonged to him. Part of it nearly did. The third person was George Hale, chief accountant. Hale had not appeared during the first days of the investigation because he was supposedly confined to his home with influenza. Reed had accepted a doctor's note. At Blackwood Press, even illness now seemed to require verification. Arthur's partner, office manager, and accountant, Reed said, all three could move royalty money. And all three had access to the typing room, Evelyn added. Harold carried the master keys. William Mercer could enter any company office. George Hale frequently used Evelyn's typewriter to prepare clean copies of account schedules after the bookkeeping staff left. Wolf rang for beer. Continue. Evelyn translated the next section. Arthur had found that every false royalty transfer began with a typed authorization bearing his initials. The documents appeared to have been prepared on Evelyn's royal typewriter, though some were more than 12 years old, and the machine was only 8 years old. The authorizations were copied recently, Reed said. Yes, someone replaced old account papers with new forgeries. Why? An audit was coming. The original papers may have carried another signature. Whose? That was what Arthur intended to discover. The false authorizations were numbered, but one number was missing from the sequence, B-17. Arthur believed B-17 was the original order, creating the Harbour Literary Fund. He had never signed it. He had never even seen it. The other documents were copies prepared to make the fund appear legitimate. What did the three men claim? Reed asked. Evelyn turned several pages. Harold Crane said he processed transfers only after receiving typed approval from George Hale. George Hale said he posted entries only after receiving payment orders from William Mercer. William said Arthur personally approved the fund during a private meeting 20 years earlier. Convenient, I said. Each man's duty began where another man's memory ended. Wolf accepted beer from Fritz and watched the foam settle. Motives. Reed had already begun investigating them. Harold Crane had worked at Blackwood Press for 23 years. His salary was modest, but he owned a small apartment building purchased for cash 11 years earlier. He claimed the money came from an inheritance. No record of the inheritance existed. George Hale had covered large gambling losses at regular intervals. The payments closely followed transfers from the Harbour Literary Fund. William Mercer had the greatest direct interest. Under the partnership agreement, any undisclosed liability exceeding $100,000 could force him to surrender his shares. If Peter Hart's estate recovered 20 years of royalties, William might lose his ownership of Blackwood Press. 3 motives, Reed said. Money, debt, and control. Do not count labels as distinctions, Wolf replied. All 3 are money wearing different hats. Evelyn translated the final complete page. Arthur had intended to confront Harold, William and George at 8 o'clock on Thursday morning, 1 hour before the larger meeting with Ruth, Julian, Vale, Pike, and Evelyn. That earlier meeting explained why Arthur arrived at Blackwood Press before dawn. Were the 3 men present? Reed asked. I don't know, Harold admits, entering at 6:40. Yes. Where was William? He claims he slept at his town house until 7:30. Witness. His servant says he left before 6. George Hale. His doctor's note says he was ill, not where he was. Number Reed turned to the last shorthand page. What is this? The final page contained only 6 lines. Evelyn read them slowly. 1 piece remains. Obtain the original bank signature card for Harbour Literary Fund. Compare the hand with the cut name on the ribbon. When both agree, confront the 3 separately. Do not accuse until the signature is certain. The final piece of evidence, Reed said. Yes. Did Arthur obtain it? Wednesday evening he telephoned the bank and arranged for a copy to be delivered before 7 the next morning. To Blackwood Press, to his private office. Who delivered it? Evelyn shook her head. Reed telephoned Whitmore Trust, which held the old royalty account. A bank clerk named Daniel Reed, not related to Thomas, and pleased to say so, had delivered a sealed envelope to Blackwood Press at 6:20 Thursday morning. Who accepted it? Thomas asked. A man in the entrance hall, the clerk replied. Description? About 60, thin, dark coat, grey hair. That description fitted Harold Crane. It also fitted William Mercer. George Hale was 59, thin, grey, haired, and owned several dark coats. The clerk had asked the man to sign. The receipt bore only the initials Ab Arthur Blackwood's initials. The signature was forged. Did the clerk see Arthur? Reed asked. Number the man said Mr. Blackwood was on the telephone. The original bank signature card had entered Blackwood Press 90 minutes before the body was discovered. It was no longer in Arthur's safe, desk, or files. Someone intercepted the final evidence before Arthur could use it. Wolfe asked Evelyn. When did you last see Arthur alive? Wednesday at 7:10. What did he tell you? That the missing name on the ribbon and the signature on the bank card would identify the same person. Did he dictate the name? Yes. On the destroyed statement? Yes. Did you type it once or more than once? Evelyn looked toward the preserved ribbon. 3 times. That surprised Reed. Why? Arthur dictated 3 separate accusation pages, one addressed to Harold, one to William, and one to George. Each page described the evidence differently. Only one contained the guilty person's true name. The other 2 were traps. Which page was genuine? Arthur mixed them before taking them. Did you see the names? Yes. Then tell us. I cannot. Yeard's temper rose. You can and will. I typed each page from shorthand without reading it afterward. Arthur ordered me to look only at the keys, not the paper. I saw the 3 names as I typed them, but I do not know which page contained which evidence. Wolfe grunted. A contrivance. Arthur was afraid, Evelyn said. He wanted to confront each man with a different version. The innocent men would deny the accusation. The guilty man would try to destroy the evidence mentioned on his page. What evidence did the 3 pages mention? Reed asked. The bank's signature card, the missing royalty ledger, and the original contract. All 3 had now disappeared. Someone had taken Arthur's trap apart piece by piece. The bank's signature card vanished before the murder. The royalty ledger was missing from George Hale's accounting room. The original contract had been removed from Simon Vale's storage packet. One person might have taken all 3, or each suspect might have removed the item that threatened him. Reed turned to the shorthand notebook. The name is on the ribbon. Somewhere, Evelyn said. The recovered ribbon contained 6 weeks of typing, thousands of lines, and several occurrences of each suspect's name. Only one sequence belonged to Arthur's accusation. Amos Bell would have to match the shorthand order, keystrokes, spacing, punctuation, and surrounding phrases to the pale impressions along the ribbon. The 4-inch cut had removed one name from one passage. It might not have removed every occurrence. Wolfe asked, what word came immediately before the true name? Evelyn studied her shorthand. Authorized. And after it, the first transfer. Wolfe looked at Reed. Then do not search for a name, search for the surviving phrase. The ribbon was returned to the examination table. Under side lighting, Bell followed the impressions from Arthur's final dictation. Hours passed. Dark letters gave way to pale ones. Contracts crossed manuscript lines. Account figures overlapped rejection notices. The ribbon preserved no respect for subject or importance. At 6:15, Bell found the phrase authorized. Then came a damaged space. After it, the first transfer, and ordered George Hale to create the Harbour Literary Fund. The name between authorized and the first transfer had been cut away, but the sentence itself revealed something. George Hale had created the account under another person's order that removed him as the original author of the fraud, though not necessarily as an accomplice. The missing name was either Harold Crane or William Mercer. A second surviving impression appeared farther along the ribbon. Harold Crane processed the payments after discovering their purpose and received. The rest was unreadable. Harold had profited after learning of the scheme, but he had not necessarily begun it. The third passage read, William Mercer denies knowledge, yet the bank card was signed with. Again the line ended at a cut. The ribbon contained more than words. It preserved the structure of Arthur's accusation and the exact places where someone had wounded it. Arthur had intended to confront 3 men. George Hale created the false fund. Harold Crane processed its payments and received money. William Mercer denied knowledge, though his name stood beside the missing bank signature. All 3 had motive. All 3 had opportunity, but only one knew which 4 inches of ribbon had to disappear, and only that person could have intercepted the bank card before Arthur Blackwood saw it, and signed the document he had dictated but never lived to complete. Chapter 6. The typist finally tells the truth. Evelyn Hart told the truth on Saturday afternoon because Thomas Reed stopped asking why she changed the ribbon and asked what she had seen before changing it. That was the difference. We were in Wolf's office. Rain tapped against the windows. Fritz was in the kitchen preparing stuffed breast of veal, and Wolf was displaying the patience of a man who expected dinner to reward him for surviving human conversation. Evelyn sat in the red leather chair. Reed stood before her with his notebook closed. You arrived at Blackwood Press at 7 Thursday morning. Yes. You knocked on Arthur's office door. Yes. You heard typing at 7:05. Yes. You left at 7:15, bought a fresh ribbon at 7:20, and rented a railway storage box for the preserved ribbon. Yes. You returned before the watchman discovered Arthur's body at 7:45. Yes. Reed leaned toward her. But you knew Arthur was dead before you went to the stationer. Evelyn's face changed. Wolf opened his eyes. I said, that explains why she followed instructions without waiting. Reed nodded. Arthur told her to preserve the ribbon if he failed to open his door. A locked door and silence might mean he was absent, delayed, or refusing interruption. Evelyn behaved as if she knew he had been murdered. I did not enter the office, she said. I did not say you entered. Evelyn looked toward the floor. Reed placed a photograph on Wolf's desk. It showed the proof closet adjoining Arthur's private washroom. High in the wall was a narrow inspection panel, 8 inches wide, used years earlier to check the water pipes. It could not admit a person, but it offered a view through the washroom and into the office if both inner doors were open. The proof closet had been unlocked Thursday morning. Your fingerprints are on the inspection panel, Reed said. I worked in that closet many times. The dust shows it had not been opened for months until Thursday. Evelyn's hands tightened. At 7:10, Reed continued. You entered the proof closet, opened the panel, and saw Arthur's body. She looked at Wolf. He said, Tell it without embroidery. Evelyn drew a slow breath. When I arrived, Arthur's door was bolted. I knocked. No one answered. Then I heard the typewriter. Arthur's machine, Reed said. Yes. The dull carriage bell made me think it was mine, but the bells had been exchanged. I heard 3 lines typed. Then the office became silent. What did you do? Arthur had shown me the inspection panel months ago when a pipe leaked. The washroom door was open, so was the door between the washroom and his office. What did you see? Arthur on the floor beside the manuscript table. Anyone else? Number, the typewriter. It stood near the window. A sheet of paper was still in it. Could you read the page? Only the heading. What was it? Statement of withdrawal. That was the page Arthur expected the guilty person to prepare. Why didn't you call the police? Reed asked. Because I saw the safe. What about it? It was open. The signed envelope was gone. The bait ribbon. Yes. She looked toward the preserved ribbon stretched beneath its glass cover on the side table. I knew then that whoever killed Arthur had found the bait. I also knew the real ribbon was the only complete record left. Where was it? In my handbag. That solved one uncertainty. Evelyn had taken the preserved ribbon home Wednesday evening. Arthur ordered her to bring it back Thursday morning, so Nero Wolfe could examine it after the confrontation. She arrived with the parcel under her coat. When she saw Arthur dead, she carried the real evidence out of Blackwood Press before anyone knew the murder had been discovered. "You removed it from the office first," Reed said. "Yes, before calling anyone." "You went to Bell Stationers. Arthur's instructions said to buy a new ribbon if he did not open his door by 7:15. Why obey a dead man's instructions instead of reporting his murder? Because the killer was still in the building." Reed's pencil moved. "How do you know?" "I heard the stair door close while I was in the proof closet." "Which stair?" "The private stairs from the third-floor accounts room." "Did you see anyone?" "Number." "Then you do not know the killer remained." She had returned to the typing room, placed the ribbon parcel beneath her coat, and left through the front entrance. Across Riddle Street, a man stood beneath the awning of a closed bookshop. He wore a grey raincoat and held a newspaper high enough to hide his face. When Evelyn turned toward Bell Stationers, he followed. She entered the shop through its side door, bought the new ribbon, and left by the rear. She crossed an alley, entered the railway parcel office, and placed the preserved ribbon in box 214. The man waited outside the stationer. She said, "When I came out another way, he lost me." "Description?" Reed asked. "Tall, grey raincoat, dark hat." William Mercer was tall. George Hale was tall. Harold Crane owned a grey raincoat, but was several inches shorter. The description supplied shape, not identity. "Why did you return to Blackwood Press?" I asked. "Because running away would tell the watcher I had saved something. I went back, installed the new ribbon backward, and behaved as if I knew nothing." "You behaved as if changing ribbons was routine," Reed said. "Yes. You lied about changing them every 2 weeks." "Yes. You wrote a false calendar entry." "Number?" "Who did?" "I don't know. It was there when I returned." The note, "Ribbon changed Monday," had been written while Evelyn was away. Someone inside Blackwood Press had prepared support for the story. Arthur ordered her to tell. That person knew his instructions. "Who heard Arthur give them?" Reed asked. "No one. He wrote them on my blotter, the impression Harold found." "Yes. Who could have read it?" "Anion entering my room after I left Wednesday. The intruder who cut the 4-inch section from the ribbon had probably seen Arthur's instruction. That person knew Evelyn would claim the ribbon had been routinely changed and thrown away. The killer expected the old ribbon to be in the wastebasket, when it was not. Someone searched for it, Wolfe said. Why install the new ribbon backward? Evelyn answered him directly. "I wanted anyone watching to think the replacement was old. That is insufficient. A used ribbon and a backward ribbon do not produce identical impressions." I was frightened. It was the best I could think of. "Number you type professionally. You knew the difference." Evelyn looked away. Wolfe's voice sharpened. "You have advanced from denial to partial disclosure. Complete the journey." She opened her handbag and removed a folded sheet. "I found this in my desk when I returned from the parcel office." Reed took it. The message had been typed in capital letters. "If the old ribbon prints one more word, Peter Hart will be remembered as a thief." No signature. "The new ribbon was not yet installed," Reed said. "What machine typed this?" "Arthur's." The defective R sat slightly high, and the carriage bell exchange had no effect upon the type. Arthur's machine had produced the threat. Someone brought the page from the locked office to Evelyn's desk, I said. "Or typed it before bolting the office," Reed replied. Evelyn shook her head. "It was not there when I arrived at 7. It appeared while I was hiding the ribbon." "So the killer entered your room between 7:15 and 7:30? "Yes." "Why did the threat make you install the ribbon backward?" "I wanted the watcher to believe I had obeyed. A backward ribbon produced faint letters like the old one. If the person looked through the glass, the machine would appear unchanged." "And you still did not call the police?" "I thought they might arrest me. Arthur had dictated a statement giving my father's estate a claim against Blackwood Press. I had the evidence in my handbag. I had entered the proof closet. My fingerprints were near his office. Everything pointed toward me." Reed said. Your silence made it point harder. I know. Why hide the ribbon instead of surrendering it when the police arrived? Because I did not know who had typed the threat, or who was watching from inside the office. Harold controlled the keys. William owned the building with Arthur. George controlled the accounts. Julian moved between every room. Ruth knew the statement named her. Simon Vale had already searched my wastebasket. You trusted no one. I trusted Arthur. He told me to get the ribbon to Nero Wolfe. Wolfe grunted. Your confidence in Mr. Blackwood's judgment exceeds the evidence. Evelyn's eyes flashed. He was trying to correct what happened to my father, after profiting from it for 20 years. Yes, late is not the same as never. That was good enough to make Wolfe's lips tighten, though whether in approval or irritation was hard to say. Reed opened his notebook again. Tell us exactly what Arthur dictated Wednesday afternoon. Evelyn read from the shorthand notes. Arthur began with the false royalty account. He named the Harbour Literary Fund, the missing authorization B-17, the altered payments, and the 3 men with access, Harold Crane, William Mercer, and George Hale. Then came the passage whose name had been cut from the ribbon, the person who authorized the first transfer and ordered George Hale to create the Harbour Literary Fund was... Evelyn stopped. You told us you did not know which accusation page contained the genuine name, Reed said. I did not know when I typed them. And now? Arthur marked the true page. How? He used the phrase black morning. It was a private expression he used only when speaking about my father's death. Which page contained it? The accusation against William Mercer. The room became still. The true statement read, William Mercer authorized the first transfer and ordered George Hale to create the Harbour Literary Fund. Harold Crane later discovered the payments and accepted money to remain silent. Ruth Blackwood signed later instructions without knowing their origin. Arthur believed William began the royalty fraud. George created the mechanism. Harold concealed it for payment. Ruth continued it without understanding the original theft. Then William killed him, Reed said. Wolfe shook his head. Arthur's belief is evidence of motive, not proof of murder. William was followed by a man in a grey raincoat. A tall man in a grey raincoat followed Miss Hart. There is no patent upon either property. The missing name on the ribbon was William's, which gave George Hale and Harold Crane equal reason to remove it. Mr. Hale faced exposure as the accountant who built the fund. Mr. Crane faced exposure as a paid accomplice. Reed looked at Evelyn. Who knew Arthur used black mourning to mark the true page? Only Arthur and me. Then the killer could not know which accusation was genuine unless he had the bank signature card, Wolfe said. The signature card would identify the person who opened the Harbour Literary Fund. The killer intercepted it at 6:20 and thereby learned which of Arthur's 3 accusations matched the bank record. That was why the final evidence disappeared before Arthur died. Evelyn's panic had protected the ribbon, but the ribbon alone could not prove who signed the account card. Someone inside Blackwood Press had watched her leave. Someone followed her toward the stationer. Someone entered her typing room and left a threat. Someone believed the old ribbon would be thrown into an empty wastebasket and burned. Evelyn's lies had made her appear guilty, because fear rarely arranges facts attractively. Yet by carrying the ribbon out before the official discovery of Arthur's body, she had saved the one witness the killer could not replace. The paper accusation was gone. The bank card was missing. The account ledger had vanished, but Arthur's dictated words remained in pale impressions along a black strip of cloth. Evelyn Hart had not erased them. She had risked becoming a suspect to keep them alive. Chapter 7. The ribbon that disappeared twice. There were 2 old ribbons in the Blackwood case. The first was Evelyn Hart's genuine 6-week ribbon, preserved between cardboard sheets and now guarded in the police document room. The second was the bait ribbon Arthur Blackwood locked inside the signed envelope in his office safe. The killer stole that one, installed it in Arthur's typewriter, used it to type the false withdrawal at 7:05, tore off a length to bolt the study door from outside, and carried away whatever remained. We had spent so much time protecting the first ribbon that nobody had asked where the second one went. Evelyn asked it on Monday morning. She arrived at West 35th Street, while Wolf was in the plant rooms. Her hat was crooked, her coat was unbuttoned, and she entered the office without waiting for me to invite her past the hall. "I know where the other ribbon is," she said. I sat down. "Good morning. The ribbon from Arthur's safe. That improves the morning. Where? At Blackwood Press. You had better give me the long version before Wolf comes down and charges by the syllable." Evelyn sat near my desk. On Thursday morning, after looking through the inspection panel and seeing Arthur's body, she heard someone leave his office by the main door. She could not see the person from inside the proof closet, but she heard the bolt scrape and the door close. That sound had bothered her. "The bolt was supposed to be inside," I said. "It was not bolted yet. The killer left the office, closed the door, and pulled the bolt with the ribbon afterward. A black strip moving beneath the door, then it vanished. The length used to pull the bolt." "Yes. A minute later I heard the records cabinet open in the typing room." "Whoever killed Arthur entered your room." "I think so." "Why?" "To hide what remained of the bait ribbon." That made sense. Carrying a loose inked ribbon through the street would stain hands and clothing. Arthur's typing room contained a locked steel cabinet used for rejected manuscripts and expired contracts. Few people opened it before the monthly records burning. "The killer hid the ribbon there temporarily," Evelyn said. "They intended to recover it after the body was discovered." "Why didn't you tell Reed?" "I was not certain. I heard metal doors, but I did not see anyone." "What changed?" "Yesterday I remembered the lower drawer. The cabinet had 4 drawers. The bottom one did not hold paper. Arthur used it for old typewriter supplies because he believed worn ribbons should be retained until every document typed upon them had been filed." "That was one of his habits," Evelyn said. "He never discarded a ribbon immediately." "Who knew?" "Harold Crane, because he kept the supply records. William Mercer, because he complained about the storage. George Hale, because he once used an old ribbon to check a disputed account entry. And me. 4 people. Yes. Julian Mercer. He knew old records were kept in the cabinet, but not that ribbons were stored in the bottom drawer. Ruth. Number Simon Vale. He thought Arthur burned them. Owen Pike. He barely knew ribbons had 2 spools. I telephoned Thomas Reed. 20 minutes later, he arrived with 2 officers and enough skepticism for all of us. Evelyn repeated her account. Reed said, "The building has been searched." "The bottom drawer has a false rear panel," she replied. "Arthur used it for confidential ribbons." That improved Reed's attention. We went to Blackwood Press. The building had been closed since the murder, though Reed allowed Harold Crane and Nora Wells to enter under supervision to keep urgent company work from becoming legally extinct. The typing room looked much as it had Thursday morning. Evelyn's Royal stood beneath its cover. The green wastebasket remained in Wolf's office, which probably improved the room. The records cabinet stood against the inner wall. Its 4 drawers were locked. Reed obtained the key from the evidence officer. It opened the upper 3 drawers, but not the lowest. "Separate lock," Evelyn said. Arthur carried the key. Arthur's key ring had contained 1 small steel key. The police had not identified. It fitted. The bottom drawer slid open. Inside were 6 empty ribbon boxes, 3 old spools and a shallow tray. Evelyn pressed 2 metal catches beneath the tray. A rear panel opened. The space behind it was empty. She stared. "It was here." "You never saw it," Reed said. "I heard the cabinet open." "You assumed the ribbon was placed inside." "Yes." "Then it may never have been here." I pointed to the right edge of the opening. A narrow strip of black fabric was caught between the steel panel and the frame. Reed removed it with tweezers. It was typewriter ribbon. One end had been torn unevenly. The other carried a clean diagonal cut. Evelyn whispered. "That is it." "Can you identify one ribbon fragment from another?" Reed asked. "Number, but the bait ribbon was black and red." The fragment showed a narrow red band along one edge. Evelyn's preserved ribbon was black only. Arthur used 2-color ribbons in his own machine so he could type editorial corrections in red. The fragment belonged to the missing bait ribbon. Reed examined the lock. Bright scratches marked the keyhole, and a flake of brass clung to the lower edge. "Simone forced it," he said. "After the murder?" I asked. "The cabinet was inspected Thursday at noon. The officer's report says the lock was undamaged. So the thief returned after the police search." Reed checked the entry log. Only 4 people had entered Blackwood Press since Thursday afternoon: Harold Crane, Ruth Blackwood, Nora Wells, and George Hale. William Mercer had not signed the log. That did not mean he had stayed away. As Arthur's partner, he possessed a private entrance key and knew the rear stairway avoided the guard's desk. Reed inspected the floor. Dust behind the cabinet had been disturbed. A faint line crossed it toward the wall vent. Someone had dragged the cabinet forward several inches, searched behind it, and returned it. "They were not merely retrieving a hidden ribbon," Reed said. "They searched for something else. The bank signature card," Evelyn said, "or the missing royalty ledger, or the original contract." Arthur had prepared 3 accusations and 3 pieces of bait. By then, every drawer at Blackwood Press seemed likely to contain either evidence or someone's reason for removing it. The document examiner arrived at noon. Under magnification, the fragment showed pale type impressions. The visible sequence read, "By my own investigation, I have found no reliable proof that Peter Hart, that was the false withdrawal typed after Arthur's death." A second impression ran along the red half. "All prior statements concerning the Harbour Literary Fund are withdrawn," Reed said. "The killer used Arthur's typewriter to prepare a complete denial, then removed the page," I said. The page was not in the study. Evelyn looked toward Arthur's locked office. "The person who typed it intended to publish it after the body was found. Arthur's unsigned draft would appear to clear everyone. Wolfe received the news by telephone and ordered us to bring him the fragment, the cabinet lock, and the entry log. When we returned, he was eating corn cakes with honey, an occupation he interrupted only enough to be disagreeable. "The thief damaged the ribbon while removing it," Reed said. "The torn fragment remained caught behind the false panel. Was the tear made while placing it there, or retrieving it? Retrieving it one side carries fresh steel filings from the damaged lock. Then someone returned after the murder, forced the cabinet, and took the ribbon." "Yes. Why to destroy the withdrawal?" Wolfe chewed, swallowed, and looked at Reed. "The withdrawal favored the killer. Why destroy it?" Reed paused. I said, "Because the ribbon identified the machine and typing order." "Insufficient. Arthur's typewriter already identifies the machine." Wolfe took another corn cake. "The ribbon carried something besides the withdrawal." Evelyn frowned. "What?" "The writer used it twice. The bait ribbon had been in Arthur's safe since Wednesday evening. Before Arthur sealed it, someone had typed upon it. Arthur chose that particular ribbon because it already carried evidence. The killer believed it was merely bait, used it to type the false withdrawal, and later discovered that earlier impressions remained." "What did Arthur type before putting it in the safe?" Reed asked. "Not Arthur," Wolfe said. "Mr. Blackwood obtained the ribbon from another machine." "Whose?" Evelyn knew. "George Hale's accounting typewriter used black and red ribbon," Reed stood. "Was the bait ribbon taken from Hale's machine?" "Yes, Arthur removed it Wednesday afternoon. He said it contained the original royalty schedules. That was why the ribbon disappeared twice." "First, Grant, no, this was another case, and I mentally fined myself $1. First, the killer stole it from Arthur's safe, believing it contained only account entries and perhaps the bank authorization. Then the same person used it to type the withdrawal and hide the murder behind a bolted door. After the police search, the killer returned to the records cabinet and stole it again, because the earlier impressions could reveal who altered the royalty accounts. The torn fragment contained part of one such entry. Bell examined the red band beneath stronger light and recovered transfer HLF-17, authorized by WM, posted GH, processed HC William Mercer, authorized. George Hale, posted Harold Crane, processed. All 3 names appeared. The line did not identify the murderer, But it proved the secret account was not the work of one dishonest employee. The three men were connected through the same transfer. Only 4 people knew Arthur retained used ribbons, Reed said. Evelyn, Harold, William, and George. Miss Hart saved the genuine ribbon, Wolf said. That leaves 3. Each knew what the bait ribbon contained. Yes, each had reason to recover it. Yes. And one killed Arthur. Probably. Reed gave Wolf a look. What prevents certainty? The torn fragment proves the thief entered the cabinet after the murder. It does not prove the thief struck Arthur. One man may have killed to protect himself, while another later stole the ribbon to conceal a separate crime. That would require 2 criminals acting independently. Blackwood Press appears well supplied. Reed put the entry log beside the fragment. Harold entered Friday at 9 under police supervision. George entered Saturday at 11. William never signed in. Wolf looked at the forced lock. The person who knew the false panel would not need to move the cabinet and search behind it, meaning the thief knew old ribbons were kept in the bottom drawer, but did not know the exact location of the hidden compartment. He forced the lock, searched the drawer, pulled the cabinet from the wall, and found the panel by accident. Harold knew the compartment, Evelyn said. So did I. Did George. Number. William. He knew Arthur stored ribbons there, but I do not think he knew about the false panel. Reed's eyes narrowed. So the disorder points toward William or George. It was less than 2 inches long. The thief had overlooked it because it caught inside a locked cabinet, while the rest of the ribbon was pulled free. That small torn piece proved the bait ribbon had survived the murder. It proved someone returned to steal it. It preserved a transfer entry linking Harold Crane, William Mercer, and George Hale to the Harbour Literary Fund. Most important, it showed that the killer was not merely hiding a blow struck inside a locked office. Someone was still moving through Blackwood Press, opening cabinets, cutting ribbons, and destroying Arthur's final message, 1 strip at a time. Chapter 8. The sentence that survived the torn ribbon fragment was 1 7/8 inches long. That measurement mattered to Amos Bell, the police document examiner. To me it meant someone had risked a murder charge for less material than was required to tie a respectable bow. Bell spent Monday morning beneath 2 lamps in Wolf's office, moving the fragment by fractions of an inch and photographing it from every angle. Since the ribbon carried black ink on one half and red ink on the other, its impressions overlapped in 2 colors and at several different times. Wolf watched for 6 minutes. This is intolerable. Bell did not look up. The letters are beginning to appear. They have been present throughout. Your inability to read them did not suspend their existence. I said, you could return to your book. I could if my office had not become a workshop. Thomas Reed stood behind Bell with his notebook open. The first surviving line had already been recovered. Transfer HLF -17, authorized by WM, posted GH, processed HC, William Mercer, authorized the transfer. George Hale entered it in the accounts. Harold Crane processed the payment. The 3 men were connected to the Harbour Literary Fund, but the line did not establish which one began the fraud or killed Arthur. Bell adjusted the rear lamp. There is another impression beneath it. He placed transparent film over the ribbon and traced the pale outlines. The first readable group was 6147. An account number, Reed asked. Part of 1. Farther along appeared private, lead, then volume she. And finally, rejected hist. The fragment contained pieces of a sentence, typed before it was locked in Arthur's safe. Someone had torn the ribbon while removing it from the records cabinet, but the tear preserved enough of the earlier impressions to point towards something Arthur had hidden. Reed arranged the fragments. 6147, Private Ledger, Volume 11, Rejected History. Wolf looked at Evelyn. Did Arthur use those words during the final dictations? She studied her shorthand notebook. He dictated. The account numbered 6147 is recorded in the Private Ledger. Volume 11 is concealed among rejected histories. Why did that sentence not appear in the translation? It was crossed out. By whom? Arthur, he said, the location should not appear in the signed statement. Yet he typed it. He ordered me to make one separate copy. What happened to it? He burned it. Wolf grunted. Truth is not spoiled by lateness, people are. After the others left, Reed remained in the office with Evelyn and me. Fritz brought Wolf beer and a plate of small apple pastries. Reed looked at the framed ribbon. People destroy papers because they believe the words disappear with them. People are wrong with remarkable consistency, Wolf said. A ribbon's obvious purpose is to put ink on paper. Once the page is removed, no one thinks about the ribbon. The object has completed its intended task, Wolf said, but not its record. Evelyn touched the glass frame. Arthur understood that. Eventually. The police retained the genuine ribbon, the torn fragment, the forged signature card, and the black and red transfer entries for William's trial. Copies of the reconstructed impressions went into the Riddle Street archive under the title, The Blackwood Ribbon Case. The archivist displayed one enlarged photograph of the surviving sentence. Pale letters floated against a black field like words rising from deep water. A week later, I visited Blackwood Press. The police seal had been removed from Arthur's office. The brass printer's block was gone. The blood-stained carpet had been replaced. Work had resumed with the uneasy energy of people who had learned that every file in the building might possess a memory. Evelyn sat at her desk outside the office. A new ribbon box lay open beside the royal. Another replacement? I asked. This one is honest. She installed it correctly, tightened the spool, rolled in a clean sheet of paper, and struck several test keys. The letters appeared dark and sharp. What are you typing? Arthur's unfinished business. At the top of the page she wrote, Public Statement of Blackwood Press. Then she continued, the novel published under the title, The Silent Harbour was written principally by Peter Hart. His authorship was concealed, his contract was altered, and royalties belonging to his estate were diverted. Blackwood Press acknowledges the wrong and will restore his name and earnings. She stopped. Should Arthur's name be included? Yes, I said. As the man who exposed it. As the man who ignored it too long and finally exposed it, he earned both sentences. She considered that and began typing again. The carriage moved steadily. At the end of the line, the bell gave its clear metal note. No hidden recording answered. No one waited behind a bolted door. The ribbon turned from one spool to the other, accepting every letter and keeping the shape of each blow. In Riddle Street, people remembered Arthur Blackwood's death as the murder solved by words nobody could see. The page had been burned, the account card had been stolen, the ledger had been hidden inside a false manuscript, the ribbon had been cut, taken, concealed, recovered, and stolen again. Still, enough remained. A few pale impressions, a torn red edge, an account number. A sentence the murderer believed he had erased. William Mercer destroyed evidence because he thought an object stopped remembering when its obvious purpose was finished. He was wrong. The ribbon remembered every strike,